host, Meredith Mills-Merritt. Today I have with me Ruchi Desai. Ruchi is a CPG and beverage founder, as well as fundraising and go-to-market expert. Ruchi transforms ideas into thriving brands. As co-founder and CEO of EIGHT Brewing, she launched the fastest independent beer in Texas history alongside NFL Hall of Famer Troy Aikman, raising over $25 million and achieving $5 million in revenue within 2 years in one of the most competitive beverage categories. With experience spanning law, finance, and operations before founding EIGHT, Ruchi brings a unique analytical rigor to the messy realities of brand building. She understands the full journey from identifying white space to negotiating with distributors, structuring celebrity partnerships, and building high-performing teams from scratch. I am so fortunate to have met Ruchi through the beverage industry. She is truly such a breath of fresh air and also genuinely one of the most kind and interesting people that I have met. So after all of that, Ruchi, welcome.
Thank you. Gosh, you've given me so much to live up to. We'll see if I can do it.
I absolutely think you can. Well, the good news is we always start off with our beverage of the week. And so with that, what are we drinking today?
Yeah, I have Zico Pure. It's the organic coconut water that Zico just put out. It's actually our latest investment with Rising Tide Ventures, where we're investing in CPG brands. We like to look at overlooked founders, opportunities, and markets. And I've known their CEO, Chris, for about 2.5 years now. Same thing, met him kind of on the beverage circuit, and just we're super excited to be supporting him. And it's great to get a little hydration. So,
oh my God, this is delicious. When you put coconut water, specifically the pure from Zico, I was like, okay, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that I get the right one, not just the other one that's at the store. And I love it. I feel like
it's so great.
Coconut water, I feel like sometimes polarizes people, but I love it. I find that it's just, to your point, it's so refreshing. It's perfect, especially I feel like we're in this continued like weird, it's hot, but it's not in Los Angeles. So
yeah,
perfect choice for today. You answered my question a little bit, which is, why are we drinking this? Is this a comfort choice? Do you naturally find yourself gravitating towards coconut water, or is it more so just, again, supporting some investments that you guys have made?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of the above. I mean, coconut water, what's been interesting about it is that as a category, it's existed for a while. There's a lot of new hydration, I would say, like functional hydrations and powders and different things that have come around, but coconut water's been here from the beginning. It's super natural. The taste, I think, can be an acquired taste if you're not used to coconut water, but it's so hydrating and it's so good for you that we really appreciate having it at home. And then, when your favorite brands come out with something that's even better, it's organic, it's using young coconuts, it tastes great. We love that. So that's really kind of what drove our interest in Zico. And then, as I mentioned, we invested in it. It's just an amazing team with great execution. So we're really excited to kind of see where the brand goes next.
Well, with that, we will launch into the first segment, which we call Your Original Story. See what I did there? As alluded to in your wonderful intro, you have such an interesting background that has covered so many different areas. So take a little bit of time and tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, that is, I'll try to keep it in like a medium-sized nutshell, but I've been working in consumer for about 10 years, but I started my career in finance. So I was a derivatives trader coming out of college, which was, I graduated in 2008, not to like fully date myself, but here we are. And it was a crazy time in finance, especially with derivatives. Right. And so I worked through all of that and kind of saw this industry mature. And a lot of what I was working on were actually new financial products or existing ones that were they were changing, the contracts behind them were changing. It was almost like they were growing up, which was a really interesting experience. I didn't really think about how much it ties to what I do in consumer now. After that, I went to law school, and then I moved to London for a year to get my master's and came back to New York and started practicing, which was super interesting. I did a lot of intellectual property work, worked with a lot of entertainment and properties and celebrities, did some commercial litigation and some corporate advisory. And the corporate advisory were younger companies. And what I realized was I wanted to be on the other side of that conversation. I wanted to build things that showed up in the world. So I left my law firm and had nothing lined up. I was like, I figure it out, I hope. And a friend of mine was negotiating an LOI for his brand. And he was like, can you just help me work on this agreement? Before I knew it, I think 3 months later, I was their COO. And that kind of kicked off this whole journey in consumer where I've worked with a number of different brands. I would say, like, always at a major inflection point. So it's how do we build a really solid foundation for our next phase of growth? And I think anyone that's gone through a startup, you really understand that it doesn't look the same and what you need and how you operate changes so much. So that was really, I would say my sweet spot. And then 7 years ago, it was 2019, started working on the idea for EIGHT with a couple of my co-founders. We had this thesis about, how we could build a beer brand. We saw a white space in the super premium market. Through that, we connected with Troy and his team, and he saw the vision, almost immediately. So from there, we just hit the ground running, and it was a ride. I had no beverage alcohol experience before that, so we learned a lot. We learned a lot really, really quickly. I have to say, like, the people in beer and alcohol are some of the most fun and just kindest humans I've met. So it's been a really great experience overall. And now we raised our Series A in 24. I've shifted my focus to working with a number of different brands and also doing some investing.
I mean, like, when I first met you, I was like, this woman could not be more interesting and more cool. And the fact that you give me the time of day is so exciting. So that's why I was so excited that you were going to come on. And so,
Yeah.
kind of follow-up question to that is, was there anything in your upbringing, early life, or even kind of later that you feel really shaped your taste, whether it's product or brand focused, or even just like how you make decisions? I know, with that finance and legal side of your brain, like there might be some things that people who are less quantitative just completely miss. So curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. I always default to my dad is an entrepreneur. He has his own business. It started in our house, like our home office became his corporate office. And that was when I was 8. So like at the end of the month when they were closing the books, I would like say goodnight to everybody and then go to bed. And it was like, I don't think I realized until I was well into my own entrepreneurial journey how much that had really influenced me and how much I enjoyed that work. The other thing I will say is that my family's very into music. My dad used to own a CD store, and I think that sort of shaped consciously how I think about brands and when I approach things now. And I worked in music for a long time when I was in law school and then like as a lawyer as well. All the different components that have to come together, not just the components of the song itself, whether it's like lyrics and harmonies and melodies and all of that gelling really well, but then the entire team that it takes to really bring all of that to life. It's so akin to startups. That's something that I think really kind of impacted how I think about businesses today, is that are all these parts coming together? Is everyone kind of doing and outperforming in their role? And then of course the finance and law stuff, I mean, it comes in handy. I can, easy agreements and things like that. But the biggest thing I'll say is just problem solving. As a lawyer, you take in a ton of information all the time and you got to figure out like what's important, what's really relevant, what do I need to respond to? And that's something that, as a startup founder, you're just getting bombarded with different things, different fires every day. So it's really, helpful to know how to be like, okay, this is important and this is more of a distraction.
Oh my God. Prioritization of fires is probably, I think, the biggest learning curve that you can go through because,
Yeah.
again, to your point, as a founder, everything feels so serious. And sometimes you just need the ability to be like, okay, actually, this is like level 6 serious versus level 1 serious. So I think that's amazing. Kind of moving into when you were at 8 Beer, was there a moment, despite not having the beverage background, which is something that I can relate to, where you realized, oh, like I'm not just running this, like I actually understand how this entire game works?
Does any founder ever feel like that? I don't know. Jeez.
If they do, have them call us because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it in retrospect now when I talk to founders and I talk about things we did or I'm helping them work through issues or problems they're trying to solve, I think I have a better appreciation for my own grasp on how the industry works and different things. And I think it is really funny now when you see different, LinkedIn posts or pundits saying something and you realize it's echoing an internal conversation you're already having that you're like, oh, okay, like I get this space, I understand how it works. But yeah, when I was in the midst of it, no, I don't think I ever felt like I had my head above water or knew what I was doing.
I mean, and give the listeners like as much of a snippet as you want, the complexity of beer distribution, not only in the United States, you can even just talk about Texas. I mean, you were piecing together dozens of distribution networks. I mean, it is scrappy. So
Yeah, it's a lot. And like, look, there's been a ton of consolidation recently, especially California is a big market where you're seeing a lot of these distributors, being bought out and brought together. And it helps and hurts. I think when you're part of a larger distributor, you're also part of a larger portfolio. So that's something to like think through. But yeah, when we were with Eight in Texas, we had 26 distributors, which was bananas. That's what it took for us to cover the state. We had some of the biggest ones in the state. We had mostly a Molson Coors network, but we had a couple AB distributors as well. And so, when thinking about like just at the end of the year, right, doing your like ABPs, which like if people don't know, like your annual business plan, that's 26 different stops. So we had to we wanted to meet with. Ideally, you're doing that in person. It is a grind. And if anyone listening has done business in Texas, like they can attest to it is a complex territory with a lot of different, I would say, individual or specialized markets that have different characteristics. Because, like not everybody cares about an organic beer, but there's other markets where that's, going to be a major deciding factor.
the number 26 gives me such chills down my spine that I can't even describe it. And I think that's super helpful context to just understand the mountain that have to be climbed when you think about not only the three-tier distribution system, but also the beer things that have been in place since literally Prohibition. Moving to your current role at Rising Tide Ventures, was there a moment where you ever thought about not pursuing that path, and what inspired you to get that started?
I mean, yes, I still sometimes I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I feel like that's the constant. I'm like, what am I doing with my this it's a lot to undertake. I think, from a brand perspective, and as you mentioned at the outset, we raised a lot of money for Eight. So I have been in that seat. I have worked, with a number of different investors across angels and family offices, VCs, and pitched, and you feel like you have no power and that these VCs, are just really holding all the cards. And I think coming on the other side of it, it's investing is really difficult. And it's not just about, oh, I like this brand or I don't, or I like this founder or I don't. And, where we can build in these spaces, I think a lot of people listening, especially if you're in alcohol or consumer, it's a tough fundraising environment right now. But if we can say like, we can professionalize how we're doing our business, we can get to these important milestones faster with a stronger team and a stronger foundation, we're going to actually bring those dollars back and be really seen as a great alternative to some more speculative categories.
This is the perfect transition into the second segment, which I call, money, power, decisions. So now that you are on the investing side, what is something that founders obsess over that you now have just started to immediately tune out?
Oh, that's a great question. I think some of it is really just thinking about like, when I hear a founder who all they can talk about is like why this product fits them or why they're the ideal consumer, I would say it's a yellow flag. It really depends. You have to dig in a little bit, but I don't really care that you like your product. I want to see evidence that other people like your product. And even if you are kind of like a great target customer, that you have the ability to listen to customer feedback and change and think through like what's actually going to move the needle, or do I need to pivot a little bit here without, losing your core objectives. And then the other thing I will say I always tune out is when founders get really obsessed with, or I would say afraid of dilution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's kind of the name of the game. Like you're bringing outside money in. Yeah, you need it. And it's going to happen. And look, 10% of a big pie is going to be worth a lot more than 100% of zero. And I know that's so much easier to say than actually do. But, when you're asking someone to buy into your business, especially early on, you have to like take into consideration the risk and reward profile that, they have in mind, and, their own LPs that they have to answer to, and all of those dynamics. So that's something that I'm like, if you care that much about your equity percentage, like it's just not going to work.
maybe that venture route isn't for you. Maybe it's more of a, extended bootstrapping or whatever that looks like. I think that's a really fair point. My next question for you is what in your mind separates like this is interesting to I'm writing a check for this?
There's a lot. I would say, God, there's so many factors and there's so many like nuances within that I would say take me out of wanting to invest. But I would say three big things that we really look at. We like to find businesses that are thinking about overlooked markets and niches or founders with non-traditional backgrounds. And so, the investment we closed at the end of last year was in Dr. Bombay, which is a fruit flavored ice cream sherbet mix that Snoop Dogg had launched and founded. But what we loved about it was that it was taking, ice cream and sort of turning it on its head. It wasn't just another chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. It wasn't, I think I saw 4, maybe 5 protein ice creams at Expo West. Like not just another functional play for the sake of it. It had a point of view and it was going after a market that people weren't talking to. So that's one big thing we really look for. Like, is there something interesting in that? 2, do they have a structural advantage, right? So is there something about the way they're building their business that gives them an unfair advantage or partnerships they have that will really help kind of accelerate the business? And then the third thing is the team. Are these people committed? Are they going to be able to execute? Can they take feedback well? Do they really care about the business? I think there's some people who will say we won't fund mercenary founders, which are, I think, often, people who are just, I see an idea and I want to build it versus I have a passion for this specific thing. That doesn't bother me as much as like, can you actually, do the work that it takes? And are you motivated by more than just that check or potential check?
Last question here is what is like a pitch behavior or buzzword or something that instantly tells you this person doesn't actually get it?
I think one thing I've seen a lot more is, like time pressures that are not real, like manufactured time pressure. And I've had brands come to me and say, we have a lead investor. Then often they're great lead investors who we respect and they're bid in deals that, we think are really, really like phenomenal deals, but they'll say we have to close this in a week and there's no chance to due diligence or anything. And it's like, we might be smaller and newer, but I'm still not going to invest on someone else's diligence. And if you're not going to give investors that time, maybe some people will invest, others won't. I've had some others that have really trickled information. So it's like, I'll give you this information now, but we'll have this, data room ready in a month, but then it's ready and they want you to be able to commit within 2 weeks. And it's like, again, that's not enough time. Those kinds of things that I really want, founders to understand is that some investors will do that. But if you want someone who's going to help you build the business, who wants to really support you and what you're trying to achieve, you need to give time for that relationship to build. I mentioned I knew the Zico CEO for over 2 years. I worked with the Dr. Bombay team for almost 8 months before we really were like, okay, we have the conviction to put this out to our network. So I think that's one thing that I would say I would reconsider. I think there's a lot of advice saying, time pressures, get checks, which is true to some extent. But I think, having enough sort of grace for what investors actually need to do their job.
I love that. The best advice that I ever got was you should think about fundraising when you don't need to fundraise, because by the time those checks start to roll in the next time, you'll be in the sweet spot. And I think that it just is such a lesson in patience and relationship building because you really do want people on your team. And again, I'm coming just from the founder side, but that's really thoughtful, wonderful advice. So for any founders out there, definitely listen to it. So we'll move into the third part, which I call the messy middle because it feels like everything is a mess no matter what. Any career, any segment, any role, any title. First for you is what is a hard lesson that you learned as a CEO that you now use as a filter when investing?
I think it's really understanding when to hire different kinds of talent. We were a small company and I've built a career on kind of understanding, like, I like new things. I like entering new markets and kind of figuring it out. And I went into hiring and talent with the assumption that other people could do the same. And yes, plenty of people can, but Not always, or not always on the timeline. I use a framework. It's called Skill, Will, and Hill. Shout out to a friend of mine who introduced it to me years ago, but I don't know where it's originally from. But essentially, the X and Y axis are skill and will, which really just means your aptitude and your attitude. And obviously, really highly skilled people with great attitudes are kind of the ideal that you want. And then, of course, if people aren't good at their jobs or have poor attitudes, maybe that's not the right fit. But there's this really nice overlay with the hill that I like, which kind of says, where do I need this person performing and by when do I need them there? And that kind of will tell you, how steep of a climb is it from where they are to where I want them to be, and can they get there? And that's been a really helpful tool for me in evaluating not only talent, but founders as well. Like, where are they now? Can they get to where they need to be in order to take this business to the next level as they're saying they are? Often for them, it's like, are you already there? And taking that also to their talent is, have you hired the right talent around yourself to help you do that? What kind of advice are they getting? And one big thing I'd say in all of that is that sometimes it's you want to pay the premium for the person that's been in the industry for a long time, that has that Rolodex, and understanding when you want to do that is so important. So that's one thing I would say I really take into, like, where is the company and who they have around them to help them build this next growth phase.
Next question for you is, how do you navigate the combination of ego, pressure, and expectations, both when you were in your seat as a CEO for a beer brand and now being an investor and around all sorts of, we'll call them personalities in
Sure.
in venture capital?
There's a lot in both. I mean, I think when it comes to ego, the first thing is just not having one. We're always
Yep.
learning. I think a healthy dose of humility is really important. And it's something we look for in our founders. Do you have a growth mindset? Are you always learning? Are you always trying to improve? Are you always asking questions that show curiosity? Because that's when you uncover new things and can really kind of continue to build. So, I think ego is something that I try to really park. One thing I tell founders I work with often is, like, you can think about investing as a really nice mirror as well. So when you're fundraising, look at the questions that your investors ask you. What can you answer more easily? What's a bit difficult? And also think about, where do you get defensive, right? Because if you can see, like, oh, this triggers me when they ask me about this, that might be a blind spot or something that is a problem and maybe you haven't quite solved, or is something that's a risk that's kind of open and could really have a bigger impact. And your defensiveness is coming because that, but you haven't put the time in to solve it or mitigate that risk. So that's one thing I would say. Man, expectations, that's a hard one. I mean, gosh, I'm still working through that on a lot of different fronts, but I think really just trying to, like, stay true to, how do you want to define success, both for yourself, for your business, for your team, and really making sure you're doing that. I think there's definitely times and decisions I've made that put us on a certain path because of the kind of company we wanted to be, how we wanted to treat our people, that may have been different if we were prioritizing only profits or only scale. And you really have to be comfortable with, where that leads.
I love that. Last question for you here is, what is something that industry people don't say out loud? And this can either be from the consumer side as a founder or from your side as an investor.
I think, on the founder side, that people don't say out loud is that it is hard and every single day you're afraid it's going to fail. And I think every founder feels that. And
Yes.
it comes down, right? It comes down to your partners. And maybe we talk about it in small groups or we'll say it kind of in passing, but that anxiety and that pressure is real. And it's not only about the business working or not, it's not only about your own, reputation or ego, but it's also about the people that come to rely on you and have bought into this vision alongside of you, whether they're investors, other partners, or employees. So I think that's a really big one. And then on the investor side, I mean, honestly, I feel like most investors don't really know what they're doing either. Like, we have our thesis, we have what we're trying to prove out, and we're trying to invest, but nobody has a crystal ball. No one knows 100% that this is going to work. And I think that's a really nice thing to keep in mind from like a founder perspective as you're talking to investors, that sometimes that no might not be really anything particular to your company. It can be around portfolio construction, what they have exposure to, how much they feel comfortable with the risk that your particular category entails, and how much they can understand that. So there's just so many different factors that we're all trying to balance beyond just will this company make it or not.
I think that's really fair. And from the founder side and from the new founder side, I think when people hear of VCs and individuals like yourself, it can feel really intimidating. And one of the pieces of advice that I got was picture them like with a stomach ache. Like it makes people so much more human to picture the person you're talking to with a tummy ache. And I think it just like levels you out as a founder because to your point, you're terrified. You really do want people to believe in your product, but even at times it's not that you don't believe in your product. You're just like, this is crazy. So it's a perfect transition for our last area before we like actually have fun. Not that I'm not having fun yet, but we'll get into that. So
Yeah.
this last little bit is kind of more like identity focused and on you. And so the first question is, what do you want more credit for that you don't think you get, if there is anything?
Oh gosh. Something that I'm really proud of is what we built at Eight and what I was able to achieve in 4 years without any previous experience in the space.
Yeah.
And I think that, it was a huge learning curve from how does the three-tier system work and what do you do with retailers? How do you engage with them? I opened up our Walmart distribution and Sam's Club, and a lot of it was just emailing people. And I emailed them
Yep.
over and over and over. And I showed up in Bentonville, and, really we went from a buddy of mine called me, he said, I have this idea, to a, seven-figure business in year one. And that was all based on just, I think, a lot of grit and kind of figuring it out, and some amazing mentors. There's a few people who really I leaned on a lot and were great and generous with their time. But I think that's something that I'm proud of and wish, I could have like a little stamp on my forehead. It's like I did this.
Oh yeah. We'll get you one of those like desk plaque things that say like with like a nameplate. So I think it is more than deserved. What are you still figuring out or unsure of?
We started this conversation about my career, and kind of it's taken a very meandering path. I've done a lot of different things. A lot of it was motivated by like, this seems cool. Like I'm
Yeah.
curious and I want to try it out. And it's taken me a very long time. And I think I'm still trying to really refine like, what is my superpower? What can I do better than anyone else? I've always been sort of like a jack of all trades, and I can get things done and I can figure it out regardless of whether I've done it before or if I know all of the different intricacies, and I can do it well. But that doesn't really distill into a specific superpower or what that is. So I would say that's something like I'm still trying to figure out about myself.
I mean, it's so funny as you get older, you feel like you have lived this long life, and then you take this 80,000 foot view and you're like, wait, I have so much time to figure this out. And even if you never figure it out, that's okay too. So, enough of the hard stuff. We're going
Yeah.
to move in to the sip or spill segment. I have my
Ah,
south side. I'll do a
same.
little, I tried to do a can like ASMR. Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. We love that. Okay, so, like the name suggests, you can either answer this or you can take a sip.
Okay. All right. I'm
So,
in.
first, describe your nightmare founder.
I think my nightmare founder is someone who is very opinionated,
Hmm.
um, very sort of, I think, set. I alluded to this earlier, but like no
Yeah.
room for pivoting, nuance. And on top of that, is unable to do the work. I think it's
Hmm.
really imperative that you, as a founder, you can do the work that you need to do, and you can recognize when you're out of your depths to hire someone to help. But if you don't have that flexibility we talked about up front, you're never going to be able to bring in good people and give them the leeway and sort of rope that they need to do their best. So, yeah, there's some nuance in there, but I'll leave it at that.
The next one is what is a trend in CPG that you are secret rooting for to fail?
feel like this is gonna get me canceled, but I feel like functional everything, like
Thank you.
I don't think we need, like I don't want protein in my ice cream. I don't
I don't
want,
either.
it's interesting. Actually, I think it was you that sort of pointed this out to me because there was something or the other that we were eating or trying, and you're like, the amount of calories relative to the actual protein I'm getting from this is just not worth it. And like I'm kind of the kind like look, I probably this makes me like a terrible like consumer investor, but I like to eat whole foods and when I'm indulging, I like to indulge and have smaller amounts and things in
Right.
moderation. And I think that it's nice to have options, but not every single thing I eat needs to be, doing something else for
Functional,
me. Yeah.
adaptogenic. Yeah. I don't remember where I saw it, and I genuinely apologize to this person if they ever end up listening, but it was like a functional beverage for hormonal support for like that was supposed to target like specifically women, maybe around certain
Mhm.
phases of their cycle. And I was like, I challenge you to name three hormones. That's question number one.
Yeah.
Name them. What do they do? I don't know. I'm not coming out with that, but yeah, I completely agree with you and I'm
Yeah.
aligned. I think one of the funniest stories is when Halo Top first came out. My husband and
Mhm.
I were dating at the time, and it was all that I had in the freezer. And to this day, he still is so upset with me that that was a phase that we went through. And so we're full fat ice cream people now. So there you go. Okay. Next one for you, which might be a sip, just depends, is what do you think the most overrated beverage brand is, or something that you think has no substance but still continues to do well?
Oh man, I have some thoughts, but I'm definitely gonna take a sip, if only to break things up, because I have
Right.
not sipped yet. So
I
do that.
know. I'm like that's always a fun, still risky question since we're
Still a
two
risky
gals
question.
in Bev. So, okay, next is what is a better for you claim that you don't believe anymore?
Oh, that's a good one. God, there's a lot. I don't know if I've believed most of them.
Fair, fair, fair.
I think I'll answer it like more generically, and if this doesn't suffice, I will take a sip as well.
Perfect.
But I think a lot of the better like claims that better for you products make are actually unsubstantiated when you look at like the amount of
Yeah.
like whatever it is in them that you actually need, like the
Yeah.
functional ingredient, right? Are you really getting enough? Are you taking it in a way that's actually going to like allow for the best absorption or use by your body? And I think when you
Right.
really look at that, very few kind of like meet those standards. So that's
Yeah.
what I would say my general better for you claim, I don't believe, but that didn't really answer the question. So maybe I'll just take a sip too.
I mean, listen, both are fine. We always encourage a sipping of a South Side. That's how I feel about the grunge craze that's happening. I think maybe it was you that I was talking to about this because I was like, you've reinvented AG1, put it in a gummy, and then you look at the sugar content on the back, and I'm like, this does not compute for me, but they've done such a good job that power to them. Last one for you is what do you think your most toxic trait is when it comes to work?
Ooh, I should bring my husband in because we work together. I'm sure he has some ideas.
Same.
God, my most toxic trait. I think, you know what? I'll say this, like I tend to be pretty quick in like drawing connections and be like, okay, if this is everything we're seeing, like here's a good place. And I think slowing down and allowing, one, other people to make the same connections, and two, to let those conclusions be pressure tested a little bit more.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably something I could work on.
Listen, hey, we acknowledge it about ourselves so that our husbands can't say anything because then it's our idea,
Oh
not
yeah, all the
theirs.
time.
So that was our sip or spill
Fair.
segment. The way that I like to close everything out is with this like general curiosity section. We keep these questions the same for all of our guests, so it's a nice way to close out the show. So the first one is give us your current sweet and sour. So think like rose and thorn.
I will say the sweet is I love that I get to work from home. I think they haven't made an appearance on this, which is like completely surprising, but I have a dog and a cat that are absolutely amazing. They're so much fun and they're usually all over the place and they're needy, but they're great. And so I think that's the sweet part. The sour bit is that, consulting and working fractionally and then investing and doing all of that, it is a lot. I'm very busy, so I spend a lot of time sitting right here. Versus, I'm looking outside. It's beautiful in LA right now. The sun's out, and so, it's a double-edged sword, but it's all good.
Remind me what your pets' names are because I remember them being amazing.
Yeah, so I have a 5-year-old Vishla named Rhubarb, and
Obsessed.
then yeah, my cat, he's a little over 1. He's all white, and his name is Parsnip. But he thinks he's a dog. He's leash trained. So yesterday, like we were traveling, so we picked him up. So we took him out for like a little walk on a trail, and he just follows Rhubarb along.
I could not love those names more, by the way.
No.
Okay, second question for you. Who is your dream, living or dead, happy hour guest?
God, there are so many conversations I'd love to have, but I'm gonna keep it in music because I talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
But like, I would love to have a drink with Miley Cyrus. Like, she is
Oh,
by far, right? Like, so interesting. So many different like eras to her, like, personal arc, her music. I would love to talk to her and just hear more about like her inspiration,
yeah.
her life. Maybe we should have her on one of these segments. That'd be cool.
I would if I get to that point, you're coming with me. Her cover of Jolene is actually bone chillingly good, and I just actually watched the 20th anniversary Hannah Montana special. So if you haven't seen that
I
yet,
have
I
not.
highly recommend it. Oh my God, it was so nostalgic. I had like goosebumps. I felt like such a loser watching it. But anyways, it was amazing. So I love that answer. My next one is what is your favorite bar snack or cocktail menu hors d'oeuvre?
Mm. Can't go wrong with some good olives, man. Some like I'm an
I'm
olive girly. Like love them either
same.
in my martini on the side. I will always, yeah.
Stuffed with blue
Yeah.
cheese, like give it to me all day. That is very real. Okay, last one. Finish this sentence. I am happiest when.
I think I'm happiest when, I mean, we live in LA, so we're outside, we're hiking. It's myself, my husband, my pets. We have a little crew of friends that come along, but it's just so great. The access to nature, having all of them together and being able to do that with like our community here in LA. Those are some really good moments.
Well, Rushi, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us here on the original Yappy Hour. And with that, that's all I've got for you.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.